Howdy folks, and welcome back to Pecan Ranch. Today we're going to talk about why I don't breed pigs. We're going to talk about some of the numbers involved in that, and basically I'm going to do kind of a few specific videos into specific enterprises, but we will discuss the other enterprises in some other videos, and it won't take me nearly as long to cover the topics of chickens or rabbits. So we're going to start with the pigs. We're going to start, where it starts. To breed or not to breed, that is the question. Do you buy your piglets or do you breed your piglets? And I'll explain the numbers and why I buy mine here in a moment. But I got to get everyone fed, and we'll see you folks here in just a minute. All right, welcome back to the back pasture. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the numbers and kind of your first step into your pig operation. So when you first get started into a pig operation, what you chewing on? What'd you find there? Find something good? Got to get a good stretch on too. So when you first get started in your pig operation, you'll likely, if you're going to start small, you're going to buy, you're probably going to buy some piglets. Now you may buy, a breeding sow and a breeding boar. That's entirely up to you, but you need to understand the numbers. First things first, any operation in farming, you have to understand the numbers, and it has to be profitable. Even if you're not planning on selling anything, in order for it to be profitable, you're just using the meat for your own personal consumption, you do need to compare these prices to what your retail prices would be if you were to buy the food at the supermarket. Now granted, a good target number to make is to at least break even to where if you were raising your pork, it costs the same as if you bought it at the grocery store. You can bring those numbers down to where it costs even less. But if it at least costs the same, then you're getting better value. It's still better because you're gonna have higher quality food for the same cost. But you can make that even cheaper. So depending upon the size of your operation and what your goals, your end goals are in mind, you need to understand where the numbers are. Now you may say to me, well, obviously does it not cost less to just have a sow that has a couple of litters a year? And a healthy sow can typically produce 20 piglets a year that you don't have to pay for. Well, think about this. These pigs aren't really big right now, but when full grown, at maturity, at breeding age, they can be 500 or 600 pound pigs pretty easily. So, and you might even have, a 700 pound boar, depending upon the breed of animal that you're raising, but that's kind of average numbers. Those big pigs require a lot of food, and you have to feed them year round. So you could consider the cost, once they get to full size, you're looking at, the per pig, they're going to eat about 20 pounds of feed a day, or upwards of 20 pounds of feed a day. So, let's think numbers here. Okay, so say you can get 40 pounds of feed for $7, and this is an extremely conservative number, and it varies wildly, but that's a pretty decent price on feed. So 365 days a year, a boar and a sow, that's two pigs that you have to feed, that comes out to about $2,550 of feed a year. Now if you're pasture raising, in the summer months, that feed consumption will go down a good bit, and depending upon your growing season, how much time of good pasture growth you have may bring those numbers down a little bit. Now, a typical market price for purchasing piglets, on average, you're looking at around $75 to $85 per piglet, and that's not a bad price to pay. So let's say you pay $75 per piglet. Well, if you buy 20 pigs, in lieu of breeding your piglets, if you buy 20 pigs a year, that comes to $1,500 at $75 a head. So I'm not exactly a mathematician here, but that is less cost than the feed involving the boar and the sow. Now, you could split your breeding pair cost in feeding down by only keeping a sow and doing artificial insemination. That is a possibility as well. Now, AI is a little bit trickier to deal with, detecting heat, getting in there and dealing with it. You could get good at it, but it may not necessarily produce piglets all of the time, and that may also hurt your bottom line at the end of the day. So even only keeping a sow, it's teetering right on the edge of what it would cost if you're only doing about 20 piglets a year. Now, as your operation increases, and so as we scale up, and say you're trying to raise 300 pigs a year, now at that point it does tend to make a little bit more sense, because you only need one boar to service multiple sows. So that's where your numbers can start curving back in the direction of being more beneficial to breed. But honestly, if you're looking at raising anything under 20 pigs a year, keeping a breeding pair is not necessarily a smart decision financially. There's also some other factors to consider too. You can say you only need to keep 3 pigs and your sow has 20 piglets a year. So that means you can sell, 17 of these piglets. Feed, quit eating them boots. What? Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't giving you attention. All right, Wilbur. Yes, okay, you too. All right, I'm sorry, buddy. Goodness gracious, goodness. So if you have 20 piglets and you manage to sell 17 at $75 a piece, that's $1,275. So then your feed cost is offset a little bit, a good bit actually. So it could be, like I said, the benchmark is if you're raising 20 pigs a year, is right at that teetering edge to where it starts to be, is it worth, financially, does it make sense to keep a breeding pair? And that is another thing to consider. So now, if you're just raising it for personal consumption, realistically, that sow is at the minimum, if you keep her away from a boar and you only breed her once a year, you could very well end up with 11 pigs or 12 pigs or 8, no matter what. That might be too much for your personal consumption anyways, so you have to sell them. Not only that, but you want to sell them in order to offset the feed cost. So now you're tasked with the additional enterprise of selling your feeder pigs. So you're selling these piglets as well. So maybe you're wanting them for personal consumption. You don't really want to sell the pigs, or you don't want to have to find 17 buyers for, or you don't want to have to find several buyers for 17 piglets every single year. That is something to take into consideration, because that's a separate enterprise almost on its own. Selling the piglets on top of raising your pork, and say you're not really wanting to get into it to have to do a lot of selling. So because of that, you really need to weigh your options. And even if it's a break-even point, so at my level, at the size of pigs that we intend to raise every single year, it is right at the borderline of where it could be cost effective to keep a breeding pair. But I say right at the borderline. That would be if we were paying market prices for our piglets, and we're not. I've got a breeder that is out in Arkansas where I can buy my pigs for $35 a piece. Now that makes it really, really hard to get to the level or the numbers of needing to keep a breeding pair. And then you have a whole lot of other factors to consider when breeding pigs. it's not just about the numbers and the money. Even if the numbers and the money did make sense, I can control a whole lot more variables by purchasing my piglets. For one, yes, my sow, if I had a sow, she may have 11 piglets. Will all 11 of them make it to weaning age? Maybe, maybe not. There may be, there may be some loss. Some of them might die. Another factor to consider, now we have to keep on the farm 2 500+ pound pigs. Now, the sows, sometimes when they're going into heat, can start acting a little bit aggressive, and then the boars will certainly act aggressive. And now you have, a 600-pound boar that you've got to deal with that is trying to get in with your sow, and say maybe you don't want to breed her at that moment. Good luck trying to keep him out. So those are other factors to consider when you think about breeding. I don't have to worry about it. I know at the beginning, like, how many pigs I'm dealing with. It's not guesswork as to wonder, well, so say, obviously it has to, I'm getting them from a breeder, but let's say her sow, one of her litters that I'm looking to buy, I'll know 8 weeks ahead of time if she, say, only has 8 pigs and I need more. I can look for another source to add to that and say, okay, I really wanted to raise 10 in this batch, so I need to find 2 more piglets, and I've got 8 weeks to figure that out. So as opposed to if we were breeding and now we're just waiting around, and then, oh, my sow only had 4 piglets for some reason. So now I'm having to scramble and look around for another source for more pigs in order to meet the demand from my customers and for our personal pork consumption. So for my operation, it just makes sense to not breed the pigs. Yours, it may. You have to take all these things into consideration. Is it worth feeding a breeding pair year round? Does the cost make sense? Is it worth dealing with the extra hassle of breeding pigs and dealing with breeding age, breeding size pigs? Is it worth it? And then if you're having the piglets, there's other things. I get these pigs, they're already castrated. If any of the males, they're already castrated. So that's one extra headache that I don't have to deal with. I'm able to purchase these pigs and bring them out to my farm, get them trained on electric fence, and turn them loose on the pasture. And I don't really have to worry about little piglets, because when little piglets are really little, they're hard to keep in fences because they can squeeze through a lot of areas that these bigger pigs can't. So I'm getting them at a little bit more manageable size. And there's less things that I have to do. Now, you may be looking at buying weaned piglets. It's kind of typical to assume that they're likely going to be castrated already, and if not, you should try and look for a buyer who already has castrated pigs, because that's, you can do it yourself, but that is a task, and depending upon the numbers, say you've got 6 of them to take care of, that's a lot of work, and it's not for the faint of heart either. So there's that benefit for me for purchasing piglets versus breeding them. Another benefit that I have that helps me out a whole lot is I'm never keeping large pigs in the dead of the winter when we don't have as much forage to graze on. So my feed cost is always at a manageable scale. So we'll get piglets towards the end of winter, so that way there's only a couple months of no green grass, but there's all these pecans and acorns on the ground, so there's enough for them to forage, and I can pretty much have them on pasture almost immediately as soon as they're trained on the fence. And then by the time that they have foraged all of the nuts and stuff, the grass will start growing and we'll have pasture to graze on. So and then we can get our second set late spring, early summer, to where we're going to be done with them before the winter hits. And so then we'll have about a month or two of, as soon as the winter starts, where we don't have pigs, and we can, at that point, it allows for the pecans to fall, the acorns and all that stuff, and basically get the pastures ready for the next batch of pigs coming in. So that helps me control a little bit of those variables. So one more benefit that I have in this particular instance, and this may not hold true to everybody, because you may not be able to find like a really good deal on pigs. I'm in a particular situation where I've got a good breeder out in Arkansas. In Oklahoma, presently, and for the last probably year or two, has had a relatively, basically a relatively decent shortage of piglets for sale. So the going price for piglets around here is about 75 bucks a pig. And if I'm purchasing them over there, and yes, I've got to drive and it costs me gas, but if I purchase extra to sell, for instance, with this batch of pigs, I bought 11 of them. I sold 4 of them. And those 4 that I bought at $35 a piece sold for $70 a piece. And I sold them almost immediately. I sold them within the first week that they had got here. So it cost me $350, or it would cost me roughly $350 to buy 10 of them, for instance. And if I sell 4 of them at $75 a piece, or $70 a piece, that's $240. Is that $240? That's $280 that I just recouped from purchasing them. So those pigs almost paid for themselves. It definitely more than covered the cost of fuel to go out there. And if at the very least I could sell 1 or 2 of them, the profits off of that will cover the cost of my fuel to drive out there, to make the 2.5 hour drive to pick up the pigs and come back. So, which is actually 5 hours round trip. So for me, there's a little added benefit in purchasing them, because I can get them for so cheap. I'm able to sell them for a slightly lower than market price here, so give someone else a decent deal and recoup some of my cost on going out to pick them up. So these are all things to consider when you're wanting to start out, and I can almost assuredly tell you that cost effective wise, if you're going smaller scale, then it makes the most sense to just purchase your piglets. And you can find decent breeders just about anywhere. Now your area may be tough, and that might be something to consider. If you have a tough time finding piglets for sale, availability may be your issue. And even though it costs more to keep a breeding pair, you might just have to do that, because you might have to make a 5-hour drive just to pick up some pigs, and you don't want to be doing that, every year, twice a year, just to restock your piglets. So you may consider, it's going to cost us a little bit extra, but we'll keep a breeding pair, and so we're just going to have to offset those costs by selling a bunch of piglets, and that may work out for you. So basically, just take all those factors into consideration and think about, run the numbers, run some mock numbers, get in there and say, okay, if I buy pigs for this much, and then I'm able to sell them for this much, it's more profitable that way. Or if I got to feed these pigs over the winter, like how is it going to work for me? How are we going to make the numbers work to where at least the operation is covering its own cost? Because that's what you want it to do. You want the very least to cover your own cost of the operation, as if you're using it for personal consumption. It'd be even better if it profits you some. And that's kind of where we're at. We're not a large scale farm, and we aren't a huge supplier of pork or anything by that stretch of the imagination, but we are going to profit some and get good quality food to put on the table, along with some good land management. Because if I didn't have pigs out here, I would have to be out here, and I'd have to mow all of this, and the land would just be more or less not being put to use. And so being able to have an operation that not only puts good food on the table, manages my land, and puts a little extra cash in our pockets, that's at the end of the day what I would call a success. So think about your costs, think about the size and scale of your operation, and decide what you want to do from there. I would recommend whenever it does come to pigs, you start with 3. Depending upon the size of your family. You start with 1 extra, basically. Say you decide, okay, our family, there's only 2 of us, so we'll eat 1 pig a year, so we'll get 2. Okay, well, we need to have 2 pigs a year in order to feed our family, so we'll get 3. Say just get 1 extra, because in case something happens to one of your pigs, your table will at least still have pork on it. And B, if you're successful, you raise all 3 to market weight, then you can sell 1 and it'll cover the cost of your operation with the other 2. It'll cover the feed, it'll cover the purchasing of the pigs, and then it'll set you up to have a little bit of cash in your pocket to purchase the next set of pigs. That is the long version, the explanation of why I don't breed pigs. And I'm not saying it should be why you shouldn't breed pigs. Just some information to put some numbers together and factor in some costs and take things into consideration to make the decision as to whether or not you want to breed pigs. And just think about it, figure it out, see if it's going to work for you. If it's not, if you have some info, drop a comment below and tell me, what do you do with your operation? Do you breed pigs? Do you just purchase the pigs and raise them? And how does it work in your operation? Or have you bred pigs in the past? Was it a colossal failure? Was it a colossal success? How did it work out for you? So let me know. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button, and please don't forget to subscribe so that way you don't miss any videos and any of these cute pigs rummaging around in the woods. And until the next time, we will see you all back at the ranch.